I never imagined that one choice, one moment of vulnerability, would lead me into a world I never knew existed. My name is Rachel Carter, and until that summer, I thought I had everything figured out. At 33, I had a stable job as a high school English teacher in a quiet Oregon town, a quaint little house on the corner of Maple and 3rd, and a marriage that looked, from the outside, solid and reliable. My husband, Daniel, was a software developer who worked long hours but always came home with a tired smile and a willingness to ask how my day went. We had been married for 6 years. The early days had been full of laughter, passion, and spontaneous road trips. But slowly, the colors in our marriage faded into something beige and practical. We still talked. We still had dinner together. But there was something missing that I couldn't quite name, a quiet ache that grew more persistent with every passing month. It was during that quiet ache that I met Chase Walker. Chase was the older brother of one of my new students, Kyle Walker. Kyle had transferred mid-semester after his parents' divorce, and he was struggling. He was bright but distracted. His essays hinted at turmoil beneath his calm exterior. I called home a few times, left messages, but never got a response. Then one afternoon, Chase showed up at school, asking to speak with me about Kyle. He was tall, confident, dressed casually in a denim jacket and worn boots, and had a way of speaking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We spoke in my classroom. He listened as I explained Kyle's difficulties, nodding thoughtfully, his brown eyes locked onto mine. There was something about him, something calm, steady, magnetic. We ended up talking for nearly an hour. When the conversation ended, he thanked me and said he'd do what he could to help Kyle adjust. Then, just before leaving, he added, "If you ever need to talk about school or just life, I'm a good listener too." I brushed it off at first. I was a married woman. But that night, lying beside Daniel as he snored softly with his back turned to me, I thought about Chase. I told myself it was harmless, just curiosity. But deep down, I knew that something had shifted. Our paths crossed again a week later. Chase had brought Kyle to a parent-teacher meeting, and we found ourselves alone again for a few minutes in the hallway. He asked me how I was holding up. I laughed too quickly and said, "Oh, living the dream." He raised an eyebrow and gave a little grin that sent warmth curling in my stomach. "I get it," he said. "Life's heavier than people think." We started texting. First, it was just about Kyle, how he was doing, how his classes were going. But soon, the messages turned more personal. He asked me what books I liked. I told him I was rereading Jane Eyre, and he sent me a picture of his old, dog-eared copy. We bonded over old music, Fleetwood Mac, James Taylor. We laughed about silly things and opened up about the hard things. I didn't tell Daniel. I told myself there was nothing to tell. The first time we met outside of school was at a coffee shop just outside town. I told myself it was innocent. Teachers met with parents all the time. But when I saw him waiting at a back table, his sleeves rolled up, a cup of black coffee in hand, I felt a flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in years. We talked for 2 hours. When we parted, he brushed my arm lightly, and I felt that touch the rest of the day. That night, Daniel and I sat through dinner in silence. I asked about his day. He shrugged and said, "Same as always." Then he went back to checking work emails. He didn't ask how my day was. He hadn't in a long time. Things with Chase escalated slowly, and then all at once. One afternoon, he waited in the parking lot after school and asked if I wanted to go for a walk. We went down to the old bridge that spanned the river, where few people went during the week. There, under the shade of the trees, he reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. I didn't pull away. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. "Neither should I," he said. And then he kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant. But then everything I had held back broke free. My hands found his shirt, his arms wrapped around my waist, and for the first time in years, I felt seen, desired, alive. We didn't sleep together that day, or the day after, but we kept meeting, kept talking, kept touching. The lines blurred until I didn't even know where they had once been. And then one rainy Friday, it happened. We were at his place, a cozy little home near the forest edge. He cooked dinner, poured wine. We talked about books, childhood memories, our fears. And then, in the silence that followed, he reached for me. This time I didn't stop him. Afterward, I lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, wrapped in his arms, overwhelmed by the mix of guilt and longing. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know how to go back. The affair didn't last forever. It couldn't. Secrets have a way of clawing their way into the light. One day, Daniel found a message on my phone. Just a simple line from Chase. "Can't stop thinking about you." He didn't yell. He didn't throw anything. He just looked at me, eyes hollow, and asked, "How long?" I told him the truth. Or most of it. I told him I was lonely, that I missed being loved the way I used to be, that I never meant for it to happen, but it did. He moved out a week later. The fallout was quiet and painful. My family was shocked. Friends were divided. Some supported me. Others judged. I didn't blame them. I was judging myself too. As for Chase, he offered to be there for me, to build something real. But I told him I needed space. What we had was born from shadows. I wasn't sure it could survive in the light. Months passed. The silence grew less sharp. I focused on healing, on understanding what had driven me to that place. I started therapy. I walked the trails behind my house alone. I wrote in a journal every night. One day, I ran into Daniel at the grocery store. He looked different, stronger, healthier. We exchanged a polite nod, a small smile. Maybe one day we'll talk again. Maybe not. I saw Chase once more after that, on a quiet evening in September. He was walking his dog near the river. We said hello. There was no bitterness, just a shared memory in our eyes. A silent understanding that what we had mattered, even if it couldn't last. Now, a year later, I still live in that little house on Maple and 3rd. I still teach English. I still walk the same halls, smile at students, grade essays late into the night. But I'm not the same Rachel I used to be. I don't glorify what happened. I don't pretend it was right. But I also don't deny the truth of it. In the shadows of hidden infidelities, I discovered pain, yes, but also clarity. I learned what I needed, what I had lost. And, slowly, I began the long journey back to myself.